I mean, if you really think back to May 2025.
Right. Literally just a year ago.
Yeah, exactly 365 days ago.
Mm.
Arne Slot was, well, he was effectively a god in the city of Liverpool.
Oh, absolutely. He was holding up the Premier League trophy.
Right. The whole transition from Jurgen Klopp, which everyone was terrified about, it was deemed this absolute masterclass.
Everyone was saying he cracked the code.
They really were. But then fast forward to today, May 2026, and the picture is just, it's grim.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah, I mean, his team has lost a staggering 19 games across all competitions this season.
19! It's almost hard to comprehend for a club of that size.
It is. And we're talking about a newly assembled squad, right? One that costs like £450 million.
£500 million, basically.
Exactly. And it looks completely broken. I mean, fans are actively, loudly booing him out of his own stadium.
Which you just don't see at Anfield.
No, you don't. And so it begs the question, right? For you listening, what exactly happens to a man's tactical brain and, a multi-billion-dollar club's boardroom when an empire collapses that thoroughly in just 6 to 12 months?
Well, it creates a vacuum.
A vacuum.
Yeah, terrifying high-stakes vacuum. And in that space, logic usually it goes out the window.
Replaced by panic, I'm guessing?
Pure, unadulterated panic. Because we are looking at a situation where the architecture of this massive footballing institution isn't just cracking, it is actively caving in on itself.
Wow. Well, welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today, we have this really massive high-stakes mission.
We've got a lot of ground to cover.
We really do. We're taking the stack of sources you've shared with us, so that's detailed tactical breakdowns from The Athletic, BBC Sport Deep Dives by Phil McNulty and Simon Stone, and honestly, the raw, unfiltered psychology of the fan bases on the ground.
Which is fascinating to read.
Totally. And we're going to unpack the agonizing managerial dilemmas currently unfolding at two of England's absolute biggest football institutions.
Liverpool and Manchester United.
The two giants.
Right. And we aren't just going to look at the headlines today. We're going to look specifically at the mechanics of these situations.
Getting into the weeds.
Exactly. The spatial, the tactical, and honestly, the psychological reasons why Liverpool is in free fall under a manager who just won the league.
Wow. Down the road, Manchester United is suddenly soaring under an interim manager.
Right, a guy who was only supposed to be a placeholder.
Yeah, Michael Carrick. So I want you, listening right now, to really put yourself in the shoes of a sporting director for a second.
It's a tough job right now.
Oh, impossible. If you had a manager who won the league last year, but was overseeing this kind of catastrophic regression, would you sack him?
It's the million-dollar question.
Or conversely, if you had an interim manager who stepped in and miraculously saved your season, would you risk giving him the keys to the castle long term?
Which carries its own massive risks.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the sheer weight of these decisions, we can't just, look at the league table.
No, the table only tells you what happened, not why.
Right. We have to look at the geometry of the pitch, the financials in the boardroom, and the psychology in the stands. So let's start with the crisis at Anfield. Arne Slot's precipitous drop.
Drop almost feels too gentle a word.
What would you call it?
It's a free fall. I mean, to put this in perspective, Slot's Liverpool have suffered 19 losses across all competitions this season.
That number is just crazy.
It is a joint century high for the club.
Wait, really? A century high?
Yes. We are talking about a historic level of defeat for a team that structurally should be competing for the Champions League at a minimum.
I don't think people fully grasp how hard it is for a team with Liverpool's resources to actually lose 19 times.
You'd have to try to lose.
Yeah. You almost have to be tactically trying to lose to hit that number with the talent they have. And that brings us to the core of the anger here.
The spending.
Right. It's not just that they're losing. It's the context of that massive financial backing Slot received. I mean, Fenway Sports Group, FSG, they backed him with £450 million in the summer transfer window.
Exactly. And that number is crucial because it wasn't just to add a bit of depth to the squad.
No, it was a total overhaul.
A complete overhaul designed specifically to fit Slot's highly specific, possession-oriented vision.
They spent all that money trying to replace outgoing legends, right?
Yeah.
Specifically Trent Alexander-Arnold and Luis Diaz.
And it has failed on a structural level, completely.
Let's break down that $450 million, because when you look at the names Alexander Isak, Florian Wirtz, Jeremy Frimpong, and Hugo Ekitike, I mean, that reads like a FIFA career mode dream team.
It's a spectacular list of talent.
Right. So how does a team with Florian Wirtz, a £40 million plus generational talent, end up looking so disjointed?
Well, because football isn't played on paper, right? It's played in space.
Okay, unpack that for me. Let's look at Wirtz.
So at Bayer Leverkusen, Wirtz operated in the half spaces.
Those are the vertical channels between the wing and the center.
Exactly. And he thrived there because he had these flying wingbacks constantly overlapping him.
Like Frimpong.
Exactly, like Frimpong. And those overlapping runs drag the defenders wide, which creates these little pockets of space for Wirtz to turn and create.
But at Liverpool under Slot this season?
That structural support is just gone.
Wait, but didn't they buy Jeremy Frimpong specifically to be that flying wingback? To, like, replicate the Leverkusen system?
They did, yeah. But Frimpong has been decimated by injuries.
Ah, right.
And Connor Bradley, who is his natural backup, has also suffered severe injuries.
So the whole right side is just depleted.
Completely. So suddenly, Wirtz is playing in this rigid, slow possession system without any overlapping runners to stretch the opposition defense.
So what happens when he gets the ball?
When Wirtz receives the ball now, he isn't finding those pockets of space. He's receiving it static, often with his back to goal.
Oh, man.
And he's immediately surrounded by, like, 2 opposition defensive midfielders who haven't been pulled out of position because there's no overlapping run to distract them.
Wow. So you're saying a 450 million pound system essentially collapsed because the spatial triggers were removed by injury?
Yes.
And Slot just didn't adjust the geometry of the team to compensate for that.
Precisely. He rigidly stuck to a slow, methodical buildup.
Even without the right players.
Yeah. And without the dynamic runners, it just turned into sterile possession. I mean, they keep the ball, sure, but they don't threaten anyone.
And this structural failure, it extends to the other signings too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Look at Alexander Isak. He relies on transitional space, through balls to run onto with his pace.
But he's been hurt a lot too.
He spent most of the season injured. And even when he does play, Liverpool's buildup is way too slow to actually utilize his pace.
And then there's Ekitike.
Yeah, Hugo Ekitike has completely struggled to adapt to the physical demands of the Premier League, especially in a system that doesn't play to his strengths at all.
Which perfectly explains the atmosphere at Anfield right now. I mean, we read the on-the-ground reporting and the fan forums and our sources, and the mood has shifted.
It's beyond standard frustration now.
Oh, way beyond.
Yeah.
It's become something far more dangerous. It's outright toxicity.
Yeah, you could really feel it during the Chelsea game.
Let's talk about that 1-1 draw against Chelsea, because that felt like the moment the levee really broke.
It was definitely the flashpoint. I mean, Anfield is historically famous for its patience, right? For unconditionally backing the manager.
Yeah, you'll never walk alone and all that.
Right. But during that Chelsea match, the boos were deafening.
And importantly, they weren't just like generic expressions of frustration at a bad pass.
No, they were targeted. They were specific boos directed at Slot's in-game management.
Specifically his substitutions.
Exactly.
I want to look at the math on this because the fans in the COP aren't just being emotional here. They were analytically correct.
Oh, the stats back them up completely.
So Slot takes off Rio Ngamoha,
Right.
an 18-year-old kid, right, in the 67th minute. Yeah. Now let's look at Ngamoha's numbers. At the exact moment he saw his number on the substitute board, he had won 6 duels.
Which was more than anyone else on the pitch.
Right. He made 5 ball recoveries. Again, more than anyone else. He had completed more successful take-ons than any other Liverpool player.
He was literally their primary ball progressor.
Yes. He was the only chaotic element actually breaking Chelsea's defensive lines.
And Slot just removes him.
Yes. For a tactical setup that was clearly more conservative, he took off the one player, bypassing all those structural problems we just talked about.
And the crowd knew it.
They recognized that Ngamoha was the only localized pressure valve releasing the tension, and SWAT just capped it off. They went absolutely nuclear.
The fallout from that specific decision tells you everything you need to know about the dressing room dynamics right now.
How so?
Well, when veteran players start addressing the crowd's anger directly to the press, you know you have a crisis.
The Joe Gomez quote.
Exactly. Joe Gomez came out after that match and publicly said, and I quote, "We get it, we understand it. For us older boys who have experienced so many good times here, it does hurt."
That is a staggering quote to give to the media.
It really is.
Gomez is basically acting as a diplomat between a furious fan base and a stubborn manager. He's validating the fans' anger.
And when the players are validating the boos, the manager's authority is essentially hollowed out.
Man. And the fans' anger, it's rooted in the destruction of the club's identity, isn't it?
100%. Think about the last decade. For nearly 10 years under Jurgen Klopp, Liverpool's entire tactical ethos was built on suffocating intensity.
The famous counterpress.
Right. The idea that losing the ball wasn't a failure, it was just a trigger to hunt the opposition in packs.
It was overwhelming. It was physical and deeply emotional.
Heavy metal football, as Klopp famously branded it.
Yeah, but I want to avoid just using the cliches here and actually look at what Slot has done mechanically.
The numbers are stark.
They really are. Our sources point out that Liverpool have been outrun in 35 of their 36 Premier League games this season.
Let that sink in. 35 out of 36.
That's unbelievable.
That is the most damning metric of all. It's not just that they're losing, it's that they're being physically dominated every week.
So why is that happening?
Well, Slot has attempted to implement a highly structured positional play system.
Okay.
The problem is when you play a slow, possession-based game without elite pressing to win the ball back quickly, you become incredibly vulnerable to transitions.
So wait, it's not that they are literally running less because they're, like, lazy.
No.
They're running less because the system dictates they hold their shape rather than hunt the ball.
Partly, yes, but it's also a lack of physical conditioning for the specific type of running required for his system.
Interesting.
Slot's system requires short, sharp positional adjustments, but when they lose the ball, they aren't counter-pressing effectively, so the opposition just bypasses their midfield entirely. Fans are watching teams come to Anfield, and comfortably dictate the tempo of the game.
Yeah, there was a term one fan used on the forums that I thought was just perfect.
Oh, what's it?
Sloth ball.
Ouch. Yeah, that perfectly encapsulates the tactical regression.
Passive, toothless sloth ball. It really paints a picture. I mean, if Klopp's system was a structural dam that held back the opposition until inevitably drowned them.
Slot's system is a dam with massive holes in it.
Right. And instead of plugging the holes, he's just calmly measuring the water level as the village floods.
That's a great analogy. And what's fascinating here is how the optics of a manager's behavior compound those tactical failures.
Oh, the body language.
Yes. When a system is failing, fans look to the manager for a reaction. They want to see the agony they're feeling in the stands reflected on the touchline.
They want to know he cares. And Slot is giving them the exact opposite.
He really is.
Our sources have flagged serious off-pitch issues that are completely alienating the city of Liverpool. Like there are widespread reports and complaints that Slot is working from home 2 days a week.
Which, in the context of modern corporate culture might seem perfectly normal.
Sure, for an accountant.
Right. But in the context of elite football management, especially in a working-class city like Liverpool, where the manager is viewed as the cultural heart of the institution, it is a catastrophic misread of the room.
You cannot be seen dialing it in via Zoom when the team has lost 19 games.
You just can't.
It signals a massive detachment. And this detachment, it carries over to his press conferences, too.
Oh, the press conferences are brutal.
Fans are furious that after horrific performances, he is frequently seen smiling, giving very placid, nonchalant answers.
There was that one quote recently.
Yeah. He actually told the press, "We played to our standards this season."
That specific quote is a psychological trigger for the fan base.
I mean, how can he say that?
By claiming the team played to their standards, he is actively lowering the historical standards of the club to match his current failure.
It's insulting to the fans.
It is. He is refusing to acknowledge the tactical reality that everyone else can clearly see.
It feels like an ego defense mechanism, honestly.
And it's bleeding into the squad's respect for him.
Which brings us to Mohamed Salah,
Right.
arguably the greatest player of the modern Liverpool era. And he publicly challenged Slot's authority earlier in the season.
Which is huge. Even if Salah is in the twilight of his career, when a player of that immense stature openly questions the tactical setup.
The rest of the dressing room listens.
Exactly. The authority is just gone.
And the numbers reflect a team that has given up on the philosophy. Let's look at the overall record. In 80 total games under Slot, his record is 50 wins, 11 draws, and 19 losses.
But the most alarming stat is their performance in the Champions League knockout phases.
Where tactical adaptability is paramount.
Right. And what happened? They failed to score in 3 out of 5 games.
They weren't just beaten, they were neutralized.
Rendered completely impotent on the biggest stage in Europe.
Exactly. But, and this is where the dilemma becomes agonizing for the Fenway Sports Group, despite all of this data, despite the toxicity in the stands.
There is still a faction within the club pushing to keep him.
This is the part that I find genuinely difficult to reconcile. I mean, how can anyone look at 19 losses, the alienation of the fans, the sloth ball metrics, and say, yes, let's give him another year.
It sounds crazy.
It does. But our sources indicate that key figures in the Liverpool hierarchy, specifically Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes, are advocating for exactly that. Why?
Because to evaluate a manager objectively, an executive board has to look at mitigating factors.
Oh, yeah.
And Liverpool's season hasn't just been tactically poor, it has been fundamentally traumatic. You cannot analyze this season without addressing the tragic death of Diogo Jota.
You're absolutely right. We really have to pause and acknowledge that. The psychological and emotional devastation of losing a teammate, a friend, right in the middle of a grueling athletic campaign.
It's unimaginable.
That is something tactical spreadsheets just can't quantify.
It hollows out a dressing room. I mean, the grief process is entirely nonlinear.
Yeah.
You have 25 young men trying to perform at the absolute peak of physical and mental pressure while dealing with profound loss. That trauma alone derails a season. It changes the dynamic of training, it changes their focus, it changes everything.
And when you layer the physical attrition on top of that emotional trauma, the context of those 19 losses starts to look a bit different.
It does.
We mentioned the injuries briefly, but the sheer volume is staggering. Alexander Isak brought in to be the tip of the spear, gone.
Out for months.
Jeremy Frimpong, the crucial spatial key to unlocking Wirtz, gone.
Connor Bradley, the backup, gone.
Leone injured.
And this is all happening precisely when they are attempting a massive transition away from the generational talents of Trent Alexander-Arnold and Luis Diaz, who both departed the club.
So the argument from Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes is essentially, you cannot judge Arne Slot's blueprint because he's been forced to build the house with half the materials missing while the construction crew is actively mourning.
That is exactly the argument they're making.
Wow.
They view this season as a horrific, once-in-a-generation anomaly.
A perfect storm.
Right. And from a purely cold financial perspective, FSG is staring at a massive sunk cost dilemma.
Walk me through the boardroom math on this, because £450 million is a number that forces executives to, double down on bad decisions.
It's the ultimate sunk cost fallacy. FSG just authorized $450 million to buy players specifically scouted for Slot's methodical, possession-based 4-2-3-1 system.
Right.
If they sack him now, the new manager, whoever that is, will walk into the AXA training center, look at this squad, and say, these players do not fit my philosophy.
Right. If you bring in a high-pressing manager, suddenly Wirtz and a recovering Isak might not fit the physical profile at all.
Precisely. The new manager will immediately demand another 200 to 300 million pounds to overhaul the squad again to fit their own system.
Which FSG does not want to spend.
Exactly. Furthermore, Slot is entering the final year of his contract.
Oh, that's interesting.
They haven't offered him an extension, which is the board's way of hedging their bets. But firing him right now means paying out his remaining contract, paying out his entire backroom staff, and essentially setting fire to a massive portion of the £450 million investment.
It's like discovering the foundation of the house you're building is cracked, but you've already bought 10 tons of concrete in bulk. So the project manager says, just keep pouring, it's cheaper than starting over.
Great way to put it. But there is a historical precedent that terrifies Liverpool fans because they have seen FSG core concrete on a cracked foundation before.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Our sources, notably Phil McNulty from the BBC, draw a direct, chilling parallel to the Brendan Rodgers era in 2015.
The Brendan Rodgers parallel is uncanny. Let's wind the clock back for a second to understand why the fan base is so triggered by this indecision.
Please do.
So in 2014, Brendan Rodgers played incredible, title-challenging football with Luis Suarez. They nearly won the league.
The slip season.
Right. The very next season, after Suarez leaves, the team completely collapses. And it culminates in that embarrassing, humiliating 6-1 defeat to Stoke City on the final day.
The tactical system had failed, the fans had turned on him, and literally everyone expected FSG to sack him that summer.
Exactly. But John W. Henry and the FSG board blinked. They chose the mitigating factors argument.
Sound familiar?
Very. They kept Rodgers, but they forced him to fire his backroom staff, Colin Pascoe and Mike Marsh, and replace them.
And then they backed him in the summer transfer window with massive money.
Yeah, they spent £32.5 million on Christian Benteke, a player who fundamentally did not fit Rodgers' ground passing style, and $29 million on Roberto Firmino.
So they gave a dead man walking manager a massive budget to save his own skin, compromising the club's long-term recruitment strategy in the process.
And what happened? The ploy failed spectacularly.
Of course it did.
The toxicity remained, the performances were disjointed, and FSG sacked Brendan Rodgers by October of that new season.
Only a few months into the campaign.
Exactly. And this is exactly what the fans fear now. They believe keeping Slot is just delaying the inevitable.
The fear is that FSG will let Slot survive the summer, maybe give him another $100 million to fix the $450 million mistakes.
Only to sack him in November when the team inevitably starts poorly.
And by November, the managerial market is completely dry.
Right. All the elite replacements are locked into their clubs. So you end up having to hire an interim, completely writing off another entire season.
Conversely, the pro-Slot faction points to the managerial merry-go-round as a warning sign.
What do you mean?
They point to Chelsea and Manchester United over the last decade and argue that panicking and sacking a manager at the first sign of crisis leads to a decade in the wilderness. Ah, I see.
They argue that winning the Premier League last season earned Slot the right to survive one catastrophic, injury-ravaged transition year.
So if you are John W. Henry or Michael Edwards, do you accept that holding the line means enduring a toxic atmosphere and potentially writing off next season?
It's a huge gamble.
Or do you pull the ripcord, eat the financial loss, and start a terrifying rebuild?
It is a corporate paralysis driven by the fear of regression.
Absolutely. But while Liverpool is frozen in fear, staring at the ruins of a broken system down the M62 at Old Trafford, Manchester United is experiencing the exact opposite phenomenon.
It's crazy how fortunes flip.
They are riding a wave of pure, unfiltered momentum.
The contrast is genuinely jarring. I mean, while Liverpool is debating whether to keep a failing title winner, Manchester United's executive committee chief executive Omar Barada and director of football Jason Wilcox are actively preparing a formal recommendation.
To Sir Jim Ratcliffe.
Yes, to hand the permanent managerial job to Michael Carrick.
Michael Carrick. A man who was brought in purely as an emergency interim in January. A guy to just keep the lights on.
Exactly. Let's look at his record since replacing Ruben Amorim, because it defies all tactical logic. In 15 Premier League matches, Carrick has 10 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses.
That is 33 points.
Since his appointment, absolutely no club in the Premier League has won more points than Manchester United.
And to fully appreciate what Carrick has achieved, we have to contrast it with the environment he inherited from Ruben Amorim.
It was bad, wasn't it?
The sources describe Amorim's final months as tortured self-flagellation.
Wow, what does that actually look like behind the scenes?
It looks like constant public friction. Amorim was rigid. He demanded a very specific 3-4-3 system with a high defensive line and intense pressing traps.
But the United squad wasn't built for it.
Not at all. So Amorim clashed with the board, demanding new signings in January, specifically a new midfielder, to make his system work.
And the board pushed back.
Yeah. And when they did, the tension bled into the dressing room. Players were caught in the crossfire between a manager who refused to compromise and an executive team that refused to spend.
It sounds like an incredibly highly strung environment, like a rubber band stretched to its absolute limit, just waiting to snap.
And it did snap. Amorim was sacked, and in walks Michael Carrick.
And the vibe changed immediately.
The immediate shift was palpable. Carrick didn't arrive with a massive ego or a rigid manifesto.
He didn't demand the board buy him £100 million players.
No. He acted as a true pragmatist. He looked at the squad, a Frankenstein's monster of players, bought by Erik ten Hag, players bought by Amorim, and leftovers from the Solskjaer era, and he simply asked, what are you actually good at?
Here's where it gets really interesting for you listening, because the tactical changes Carrick made are totally counterintuitive to modern elite football philosophy.
The Athletic published a brilliant breakdown of this.
Yeah, they did. Because modern football dictates you must press high and dominate possession.
But Carrick looked at his players and said, no, we aren't going to do that.
Exactly. Carrick made the incredibly brave decision to actively lower the defensive line and reduce the pressing intensity.
Because under Amorim, United were desperately trying to win the ball high up the pitch. But because they lacked the collective physical coordination, the opposition would just pass right through them,
exposing a massive, expansive space behind the defense.
They were constantly vulnerable to the counterattack.
Right. So Carrick drops the block. He brings the midfield and defense closer together, compacting the center of the pitch.
Now, look at the statistical result of this change. Under Carrick, United actually allowed opponents a higher pass completion rate in their build-up phase.
Wait, really?
Yes, it went from 77.7% under Amorim to 82.2% under Carrick.
Let me stop you right there. Because if I'm a fan looking at a spreadsheet and I see my team is letting the opposition complete 82% of their passes, I'm thinking my team is getting dominated. Why is that actually a genius move?
Because you have to ask where those passes are being completed.
Ah.
Carrick was allowing the opposition's center backs to pass the ball sideways amongst themselves.
Far away from the goal.
Exactly. It's what we call sterile possession. He gave up the illusion of control in non-dangerous areas.
Okay, that makes sense.
But crucially, by dropping the block and compacting the space, the number of dangerous possessions United lost decreased significantly. It dropped from 24.3 to 19.6 per game.
Ah. So by letting the other team have the ball in their own half, United stopped giving the ball away in dangerous transition moments in the middle of the park.
Precisely.
He essentially built a fortress in front of his own penalty area and said, "Come break us down."
He eliminated their transitional vulnerability. And once United were solid defensively, he simplified the attack.
No more complex positional rotations.
Right. He relied on quick vertical passing to break out of that low block, and he completely weaponized set pieces.
Which is huge.
And he leaned on the individual brilliance of his playmakers, like Bruno Fernandes, dropping deep to launch long passes for runners like Marcus Rashford or Alejandro Garnacho.
He turned a broken, overcomplicated machine into a highly efficient counterattacking unit.
And the player buy-in is off the charts.
Yeah. Matthias Cunha gave an interview comparing Carrick's arrival to Sir Alex Ferguson vibes.
That is massive praise.
He claimed Carrick brought a magic back to the dressing room. And look at Benjamin Sesko, who looked completely lost under Amorim.
His form is revitalized.
Totally. Because he is now running into space rather than trying to play intricate wall passes against a set defense.
And you have senior leaders like Bruno Fernandes and Harry Maguire publicly pleading with the Ineos boardroom to give Carrick the permanent job.
I mean, the results speak for themselves. Carrick isn't just beating relegation fodder.
No, he's beating the big boys.
He's orchestrated key victories against Manchester City, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, and Aston Villa.
Incredible run.
He took a team languishing in 7th, completely devoid of confidence, and rocketed them to 3rd, securing Champions League football.
He is only the 4th manager in history to win his first 6 Premier League home games,
joining absolute legends like Carlo Ancelotti, Manuel Pellegrini, and Sven-Göran Eriksson.
It is an undeniable, spectacular run of form.
I know there is a but.
There's always a but.
This is Manchester United. There is always a pervasive anxiety lurking underneath the success. Despite this historic run, a very vocal, significant portion of the United fan base is absolutely terrified of Ineos handing Carrick a permanent contract.
It sounds contradictory, but they are terrified.
Why?
Because they are deeply traumatized by their own recent history. They refer to it as the ghost of Ole.
Oh, the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer era. The trauma is still so fresh.
Let's remind the listeners who might not remember the exact timeline.
Yeah, back in December 2018, Jose Mourinho was sacked, leaving behind a toxic, fractured dressing room.
Very similar to the Amorim situation.
The club brought in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, a beloved club legend, just like Carrick, as a pure interim to just lift the mood.
And Solskjaer went on an incredible run. He won 14 of his first 19 games.
He famously orchestrated that miraculous Champions League comeback against PSG in Paris.
The vibes were immaculate.
Rio Ferdinand was on television shouting, "Ole's at the wheel, give him the contract."
So the board panicked, gave him a massive 3-year permanent deal, and then...
The reality of the Premier League set in.
Exactly. The emotional bump of an interim manager only lasts so long. Eventually, the adrenaline fades, and you are left relying on pure tactical acumen to navigate a grueling 38-game league campaign plus European football.
Fans loved Ole the man, but tactically he was eventually exposed by elite managers like Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp.
And the fear is that Carrick is quite simply Ole 2.0.
A fantastic vibes guy.
A brilliant mood lifter who stabilized a toxic dressing room by stripping away Amorim's complex rules, but not the elite tactical mastermind required to build a dynasty.
And the fans who are skeptical point directly to Carrick's actual managerial resume.
Right, because before this miraculous interim run, his only permanent gig was in the championship with Middlesbrough.
Let's analyze his time at Middlesbrough, because that is the only data set we have of Michael Carrick actually building his own team over a long period.
It's very revealing. Initially, he did exactly what he did at United. He came in, lifted the mood, and played very entertaining, fluid football.
They reached the playoffs, right?
They did. But the following season, when opposition managers had time to study his system, and when key players were sold or injured, he struggled massively to adapt.
Ah.
His plan B was virtually non-existent. When the system broke down, he didn't have the tactical depth to rebuild it on the fly.
Which brings us to the specific tactical anxieties fans are spotting right now, even during this winning run at United. Because when you look closely at the matches, it hasn't all been smooth sailing.
Fans and tactical analysts have noted a very worrying trend in Carrick's in-game management.
What's the trend?
There is a distinct reluctance to make early substitutions when the game plan isn't working.
Interesting.
If United starts poorly in the first 20 minutes, Carrick seems unable or unwilling to make the structural adjustments required to change the flow of the game.
So they just sort of ride it out.
They often just suffer through it, relying on individual moments of brilliance from players like Bruno or Rashford, rather than a systematic fix from the bench.
It highlights the monumental difference between being a caretaker manager and the permanent Manchester United manager.
It's night and day.
As an interim, there is absolutely zero pressure. If Carrick finishes 5th, everyone says, well, Amarim left him a mess, he did his best. The players play with freedom because the weight of history isn't on their shoulders.
But the second you sign that permanent contract, the paradigm shifts entirely.
The expectations go through the roof.
Suddenly, finishing third isn't a miracle, it's the minimum expectation. You have to navigate a 60-game season, manage the egos of 80 million-pound players who aren't getting minutes, design complex preseason training regimes.
And go toe-to-toe tactically with Guardiola, Arteta, and Emery every single week.
Exactly.
Wait, I want to push back on that a bit.
Yeah.
Didn't we just say Carrick outsmarted Guardiola and Arteta during this run? Why can't he do that over a 38-game season?
Because outsmarting Pep Guardiola in a one-off game when you are playing as a defensive, counter-attacking underdog is very different from breaking down a low block against Crystal Palace on a rainy Tuesday night.
When the onus is entirely on you to create the play.
Exactly. As the permanent manager, teams will stop attacking United, they will sit back and force Carrick to break them down.
And that is exactly what he struggled to do at Middlesbrough.
Precisely.
Ah, so it's the difference between being the reactive underdog and the proactive favorite.
It's a huge leap.
And that leads to a much more cynical concern that is brewing among the fan base regarding the Ineos boardroom.
The yes man theory.
Yes, because a lot of fans suspect that Ratcliffe, Wilcox, and Barada aren't choosing Carrick because he's the next Guardiola.
They are choosing him because he's a yes man.
This is a huge factor in modern club politics.
Mm-hmm.
We have to remember why Ruben Amorim was sacked. It wasn't just bad results, it was constant friction.
Amarim demanded a new midfielder in January. He pushed back against the club's recruitment model. He was difficult to manage.
And executives hate difficult managers.
They really do. And Ineos is currently undergoing a massive restructuring of the club. They want total control over recruitment, wage bills, and club culture.
And Michael Carrick is a club legend who loves the institution. He isn't going to rock the boat.
He isn't going to go to the press and demand £100 million signings.
He will work quietly with whatever the sporting director gives him.
So fans worry that Ineos looks at Carrick and sees a cheap, easy, compliant option, a manager who makes the executives' lives significantly easier, even if it compromises the club's ultimate ceiling on the pitch.
And if they appoint Carrick, and he is exposed tactically by November, the consequences are catastrophic.
The club will have wasted another entire season.
Squandered millions of pounds on players that might not fit the next manager.
And completely derailed the momentum of returning to the Champions League.
It is a massive gamble, masked by the comforting nostalgia of a club legend.
It really is.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the fundamental difference between Liverpool's crisis and Manchester United's revival boils down to tactical adaptability versus ideological rigidity.
It's the defining contrast of the season.
Let's look at them side by side. How Carrick handled a broken United squad versus how Slot handled an expensively assembled Liverpool squad.
Carrick's success is entirely rooted in pragmatism. He recognized that the squad was flawed, so he created a tactical framework that protected those flaws while maximizing the limited strengths.
He didn't try to impose a rigid philosophy.
No, he engineered a survival mechanism that evolved into a winning formula.
Carrick looked at a squad built with different visions, lowered the press, focused on defensive solidity, and allowed Bruno Fernandes to just play instinctual football.
While Slot, on the other hand, walked into Anfield, received a massive £450 million investment, and rigidly stuck to a philosophy that the players either couldn't physically execute due to injuries.
Or wouldn't execute due to a lack of belief.
Slot even admitted it publicly. He told the press they were in survival mode.
But unlike Carrick, who adapted to survive, Slot just kept playing the same slow possession game.
Steven Gerrard, an absolute icon at Anfield, went on television and openly criticized Liverpool's inability to break down low blocks under Slot.
He called them entirely predictable.
And Slot had to stand there and defend a system that everyone could see was failing.
It's the difference between a synchronized swimming routine and a jazz ensemble.
I like that.
Slot demands synchronized swimming. If one person like Frimpong or Isak is missing or out of rhythm, the entire routine looks ridiculous and the team drowns.
And Carrick?
Carrick realized his orchestra couldn't read the sheet music, so he just told them to play jazz. He gave them a loose framework and let them improvise.
That is the reality of the Premier League in 2026. If you cannot adapt your philosophy to the physical realities of your squad's fitness on any given Wednesday night against Stoke or Nottingham Forest, you will get found out.
You cannot force a square peg into a round hole when the hole is actively moving. Which brings us to the ultimate question facing both FSG and Ineos. Let's spin the replacement carousel.
Let's do it.
If Liverpool finally decide to pull the plug and sack Arne Slot, or if Manchester United get cold feet on Carrick and look for a permanent elite manager who is actually available, let's start with the vacancy that might open up at Anfield. Who replaces Slot?
The name dominating every fan forum, every pub conversation, and reportedly at the top of Michael Edwards' theoretical shortlist is Xabi Alonso.
The return to the king.
It seems almost preordained. Alonso is an undisputed Liverpool legend. He understands the emotional weight of the city.
And more importantly, his managerial pedigree is now elite.
He won the Bundesliga with Bayer Leverkusen, completely dethroning Bayern Munich, playing magnificent, intricate football.
And crucially, he has an existing, deep relationship with two of Liverpool's most expensive, underperforming assets, Florian Wirtz and Jeremy Frimpong.
He is the man who unlocked them at Leverkusen.
He theoretically solves the £450 million problem overnight.
It sounds like the perfect marriage. But there are significant red flags that the Liverpool hierarchy is agonizing over.
Like what?
First, there is his recent managerial history. After Leverkusen, Alonso had a short stint at Real Madrid, and former Liverpool midfielder Danny Murphy pointed out on BBC Sport that Alonso struggled with man management in a dressing room filled with massive egos.
Managing the locker room at Leverkusen is very different from managing the global superstars at Real Madrid or Liverpool.
Exactly. But the bigger concern is tactical.
Go on.
We just spent 20 minutes dissecting how Liverpool fans have actively revolted against Arne Slot's slow, possession-based style. They hated slothball.
Right. They want heavy metal.
Well, Xabi Alonso favors a highly methodical, Spanish-style, possession-heavy game.
Uh-oh.
It is beautiful when it works, but it is slow and deliberate. It is not the chaotic, high-octane pressing of the Jurgen Klopp era.
So the massive fear at FSG is,
Right.
what if they fire Slot for playing slow football, hire Alonso, and the fans turn on Alonso by October because he also plays slow football?
Exactly. Would Alonso's style suit the unique physical demands of Anfield? It's a massive tactical risk.
If not Alonso, who else is Liverpool looking at? A lot of pundits are screaming for Luis Enrique.
Enrique represents a clear, defined identity. He has elite pedigree, having won the treble with Barcelona, and he plays a much more aggressive style than Alonso or Slot.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, Enrique is currently deeply entrenched at Paris Saint-Germain. He is building a massive project there. He has infinite financial backing, and it is highly, highly unlikely he abandons that to walk into the toxic, injury-ravaged rebuild currently required at Anfield.
Okay, let's look at the other side of the M62. If Sir Jim Ratcliffe wakes up in a cold sweat, haunted by the ghost of Ole, and decides Michael Carrick is too big a risk, who does Manchester United hire?
This is the terrifying reality for Ineos. The elite manager market is completely barren.
Completely barren.
Thomas Tuchel, who United courted previously, is locked in managing the England national team. Julian Nagelsmann is firmly embedded with the German national team. Carlo Ancelotti is never leaving Real Madrid voluntarily.
The top tier is completely unavailable. So who does that leave for a club of Manchester United's stature?
It leaves what we call mid-table overachievers. Managers who have done brilliant tactical work at smaller clubs, but who lack the elite pedigree.
Names like Andoni Iraola at Bournemouth or Oliver Glasner at Crystal Palace?
Exactly.
Let's analyze that. Iraola has done an incredible job at Bournemouth, implementing a fantastic high-pressing system.
He has.
But managing Bournemouth, where avoiding relegation is the primary goal and the media scrutiny is minimal, is a different universe from managing Manchester United, where every substitution is debated by millions of people globally.
It's an astronomical leap. You are asking a manager to step into a geopolitical institution, manage a fractured boardroom, deal with the most demanding fan base in the world, and instantly win trophies.
History is littered with brilliant mid-table managers who were utterly swallowed whole by the pressure at Old Trafford.
David Moyes is the prime example.
So I throw this back to you, the listener. If you are Sir Jim Ratcliffe, do you choose Michael Carrick, a man with zero elite permanent managerial experience, but who just tactically outclassed Pep Guardiola, stabilized the dressing room, and has the backing of the fans?
Or do you gamble on a manager like Andoni Iraola, who has a better tactical resume but has never handled the suffocating radioactive pressure of a mega club?
It's a paralyzing choice.
And what's fascinating is how this utter lack of elite available managers is actively forcing the hands of both these massive clubs. It is the hidden variable in all of this.
Explain that.
Liverpool might ultimately choose to keep a failing manager in Arne Slot, not because they believe in him, but simply because the market is dry. They missed out on Alonso previously, and there is no guaranteed upgrade available to justify the £50 million cost of sacking Slot and his staff.
And United might promote Carrick for the exact same reason. They might hand him a 3-year deal simply because there is no Tuchel or Nagelsmann waiting in the wings.
They are making a virtue out of a necessity.
So what does this all mean? We've looked at the underlying tactical metrics, the £450 million sunk investments, the psychology of toxic crowds, the incredible interim runs, and the sheer lack of alternatives.
It's a lot to take in.
The tale of Arne Slot and Michael Carrick proves that in elite football, momentum is a living, breathing organism. It is everything.
Slot lost his momentum, he lost the emotional connection with the crowd, he refused to adapt his tactics, and now he is drowning in a sea of his own making.
While Carrick, against all odds, caught lightning in a bottle, adapted his tactics to suit a broken squad, captured the dressing room, and is surfing that wave straight toward a massive permanent contract.
It is the ultimate lesson in modern sporting dynamics. Managing a top football club in 2026 is no longer just about drawing X's and O's on a whiteboard or analyzing past completion stats.
No, it's high-stakes crisis management.
It's about media optics, knowing exactly when to smile to project calm and when to scowl to show you share the fans' pain. It's about deep fan psychology and understanding the emotional temperature of the city you represent.
Carrick, inherently, mastered the mood of Manchester. Slot Maniga misread the mood of Liverpool entirely.
He really did.
Which leaves us with a lingering, slightly uncomfortable question as we look ahead to what promises to be a chaotic summer transfer window. Ask yourself this.
Okay, let's hear it.
As these multi-billion-dollar corporations cycle through managers every 18 months, is the modern football manager just becoming a glorified scapegoat for the boardroom?
Oh, that's a great point.
When Liverpool's highly scouted £450 million worth of signings failed to launch because of structural injuries, or when Manchester United's squad needs its third mid-season cultural reset in as many years, maybe the real problem isn't the man standing in the dugout trying to solve the puzzle.
Maybe it's the executives buying the puzzle pieces.
Exactly. Maybe the inherent flaw is in the machine operating above him.
That is something to think about.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the narratives behind the headlines. Look beyond the simple stats, and we will see you next time.